Let's look, all right? You tell me what you think here. Let's look it up. Where's that shaft?
It's from.
Right now, if you didn't know how he took it back, right? So his hands go straight back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he bows his wrist, right? Because he has that super weak grip.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you didn't know that and all you saw is that, that's a pretty, like, textbook downswing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And the shaft, what I would call, like, steep would be if the shaft were up here.
Mm-hmm.
I would call kind of an in-between, which would be somewhere in here. And then I would call shallow on the forearm or even slightly under the forearm. I would call those all shallow. So I would definitely say he's shallow.
Yep.
Okay? And then if you look at his swing from the front view, here we go. So if we look at this from the front view, I mean, obviously you can see how weak his grip is, right?
Yeah.
But you made the comment, I said, why is his swing good? You said great impact. So it's just a little, didn't quite catch him at impact, right?
Yeah.
But you see, look at his left wrist, is it breaking down?
No.
And look at his eye line. It's not rotating open, is
Right.
it? Okay, so so if you look at, and I showed you this the other day probably, so I showed you this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I mean, you look at all these guys and their impact, I mean, they're not the greatest, I mean, I don't like this leg work, and I don't like his arms way up in the air, but he works under the shot and gets shallow, and then look at his hands, right?
Yeah.
So all these guys have that. I mean, this guy's super shallow, but look, that's just his body's way back, but look at his hands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So what's going to make your swing good is delivering the club on plane with a really good impact, okay, and controlling that club face. So I would not worry about swinging like whoever, you know, Adam Scott or Rory McIlroy, or, you know, so I don't think you need, I think you want to swing on you. And you have, you know, really good posture. So when you get your shoulders this way, kind of opened up, which you always do, that shortens your arms. Did you know that? So watch this. Watch what happens when I round my shoulders. Look at how far down where my arms go.
Yeah.
But as soon as I open my chest up, it brings my arms up to my body more, right? So now when I turn, if I stay wide, I'm going to have a super short backswing or a shorter backswing. Now, if I have rounded shoulders and I have my arms are like over a bar like this, then I can have my arms are going to go back farther.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're going to see now that you're, you know, swinging more on plane here is you're going to see, I know this is only an 8 iron, okay, but you're going to see your backswing length is pretty compact. That's pretty good. That's great depth. There's the top of that backswing. I mean, that's pretty doggone pure if you ask me. And if I draw that line up to the ball here, that's pretty much right on plane. So at impact, you see how the shaft of that club kind of goes right up your forearm? That's perfect. Now your hands go around. I mean, to be honest with you, like I don't see a whole lot wrong with that. Now, your club face has always been teetering on open.
Right.
So when you have an open club face, it forces your left wrist to have to do more what Rahm and those guys do. You have to have more bow to be able to not flip it and all that other stuff. But I mean, I don't know, that's really good. So if I was going to be, like that was a really perfect shot. If I was going to be nitpicky, look at that impact. I mean, that's really, really good, Aaron. And then you know, if I was going to get super nitpicky, I'd just say, hey, try to keep that club head outside your hands a bit longer.
Mhm.
That'd be the only thing I could see that could really make a big difference, you know? But some of the guys, like, when you look at a swing like Morikawa or whatever, and you, like if you watch this with the driver, right? And if you watch what happens when he comes down to impact, you know, you see his hands ahead, which is what yours are, but then you don't see the club head passing. Well, you got to remember he's got a pretty weak grip, so he's got to bow his wrist more than normal, and then he's got to make sure he doesn't roll his wrist over. Okay, so those guys like Rahm and him are both in the same category. That's why Rahm does it first. He bows it at the top.
Right.
So does Morikawa a little bit, but not as much as Rahm. Then they really rotate into impact, and then they hang on like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that'd be the only thing I see with you is just, I mean, that's about as good as it gets. It's really good. Okay. And what I would do is I would just always rehearse my impact position, and I would always rehearse the face based on what the ball's doing.
Mhm.
So if the ball's hooking too much, I'd have that face like that.
Yeah.
If it's not hooking enough or drawn enough, I'd have it a bit more square.
Mhm.
And then what I would do is I would just make sure that I'm releasing, right? You hear that release,
Yeah.
but then I'm not gonna let it pass.
Yeah.
So working on the follow through side, you know, you're just standing around waiting, just doing a lot of this, just rotating, getting the hands to work with your pivot, letting that face be neutral, not letting the toe pass. Those are the kinds of things that you could do to make it a little bit better. But I mean, and this is a mat too. This isn't even ground, right? If it's off the dirt, it would be better because you would dig into the ground.
Yeah.
And the other thing that'll happen is here too, if you do it better, a little bit better with this down a little more, then your head you can kind of keep that head back. You don't have to chase it quite as much. You tend to kind of get out in front there a little bit. But it's late, you know, you don't do that till very late. See how your head's back?
Yeah.
And then at the end you kind of let it release up. So it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But most of the time these guys are in a straight line like this.
Yeah.
When they finish, right? You see that there, Hogan, same, Morikawa, whatever. They're, you know, but I mean that's minor because it's not. If you did it through the ball, it would make a difference. But you do it so late, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can see how straight up and down he is, right?
Yeah.
So he's not chasing that ball.